right? So this is basically how your container runtime interface runs. So kubelet that basically will communicate with your server, API server, and that API server will ensure that the container images are running on the worker nodes, and worker nodes will have the local Docker installation setup, where kubelet is indirectly communicating with the Docker software to ensure that the containers are triggered, right? So this is how basically your interface looks like. And we basically call this as gRPC, remote procedural call. That's the full form. It's basically one of the frameworks which is used for having the communication established between all these individual independent microservices. Microservices, because these services that we are trying to work with are individual independent modular services which all together try and give us the end result, and each of these individual independent service is again having failover mechanisms and self-maintenance and all that. So that's the framework which ensures that all subtasks or sub-services, microservices, are communicating among each other and giving the end user the required experience. Okay, so this is a little advanced detail. gRPC is a protocol which is used. I mean, it's basically the communication interface, more into networking and all those concepts. So this is a typical CI/CD pipeline that we will basically have. All right. Okay, so this is basically the theory, not much of theory here. In order to install the Kubernetes service, right, we will not be able to do it on our local machines. The complete Kubernetes engine cannot be installed on our local machine. So we will be using something called as Minikube for installation. And it takes some additional configuration, some other additional softwares also, like VirtualBox is something that we will be installing to create the cluster of machines that we need. So virtualization is used to even work with your Kubernetes because we need to create multiple worker nodes and all that, right? So for that, we will have to create the virtual machines and try to replicate those virtual machines as different computers which are interconnected. We are creating a cluster like master node, worker nodes, etc. And using that virtualization, VirtualBox software, we will install a software called as Minikube. It's a smaller version of Kubernetes engine, you can say. And then we will also be using the Kubernetes engine or Kubernetes services on cloud, as I already mentioned. Okay, so this is basically how we are going to now practice the installation of Kubernetes.